without further ado, I would like to introduce Aboudi Asali from JLL and his panel to discuss some of the hot spots in Middle East and Africa. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Hello?
Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. Very nice to see you all, and really, thanks, Matt. That was a very good introduction, and it's really a delight to see everybody. And it's true, it feels like those 2 years have not passed, and we're seeing again all the familiar faces. So it's very exciting. And also, I have to say, so many people think that it has been a slowdown or it has been a, nothing has happened. But honestly, the last 2 years, when I see the numbers, are quite impressive in development. We had around 50,000 keys signed from 2020 and 2021 in the Middle East and African region. And of course, here with me are actually the hotel groups that have actually signed most of the deals. And if I may quickly introduce you, so next to me is Carlos Khneisser, Vice President of Hilton, Middle East and Africa. Jerome Briet from Marriott, Europe, Middle East, Africa Development. And Abi Abboud, who is the Vice President of Accor for Development, also Middle East and Africa. So right away, I would like to start with you, actually, Jerome, in the middle, if I may, about...
He has a bigger title than us.
It's an important title, yeah, it starts with that.
Size doesn't matter, Carlos.
Exactly. But, for this title about development bright spots in Middle East and Africa, what was it for Marriott in the last couple of years? And where do you see it really going forward?
So first of all, if I may start with something completely out of context. For once, I'm glad to see you wearing pants, Matt. It's a great, great achievement. We got tired of your boxers on the team schools.
I was showing you.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be no surprising part, right? If we look at the key markets in the region, Saudi is clearly driving the growth, the mega projects, and I see a few familiar faces here from the giga projects. They're certainly driving a lot of our growth in the region. I think UAE is still driving growth, especially on the conversions front. Egypt is very active these days, be it in Cairo, Alex, or on the coastlines, North Coast and Red Sea. But we're starting to see a renewed interest in developing hotels in the sub-Saharan part of Africa that had clearly disappeared for a while due to the financing issues. But again, when we look at what projects, what brands go where, they're very different. When we're looking in sub-Saharan Africa, we've got 2 key brands that we're launching this year, Moxie and Fairfield, and we think that these have the greatest potential. They're well positioned in the upper mid-scale region. And that is clearly a segment that keeps growing, especially in those markets that have more domestic demand and rely a bit less on the international travelers, which becomes very handy these days. Whereas in the Middle East, somehow we still, even though we're seeing growth for brands like Moxie on the 3-star lifestyle front, there is still this interest in doing full service and luxury developments, and it works sometimes. I just think that if nothing else, this crisis will help maturing into a more balanced and diversified hospitality industry.
Excellent, thank you. Louis, how was it for Accor in these couple of years? It seems you had a very good pipeline, lots of signed deals in the last 2 years. I think actually, if I see from the 3 of you, I believe Accor had the largest number of keys. But where was the bright spots for you, and is it only about geographical?
I think geographically we're a bit similar to Marriott. I think that Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE has been a big focus for us. But I think that the difference here is that the type of hotel that we're developing has shifted. There's a much bigger interest in lifestyle hotels that are mainly focused much more on the community that these hotels sits in, less risky on what happened recently with the pandemic, because you can focus more on food and beverage, focus more on that community that sits around the hotel. So a lot of our investors are focusing. They want this differentiation. Another important segment that we've seen a massive growth in is definitely leisure and all-inclusive, mainly in the UAE and in Egypt, and starting now in Saudi Arabia, where leisure is definitely something that has not been impacted as much as other classic business hotels. So we've seen all-inclusive leisure, for us at least, really growing in Egypt. We are starting at looking at very interesting projects in all-inclusive in Saudi Arabia, and we believe this is something that we're going to continue focusing on.
Is that one of the reasons of the acquisition of Rixos for Accor?
Absolutely. So the Rixos acquisition has actually opened our eyes on all-inclusive in general, and we believe that we can build on that success and look at the Rixos model, but expand it to additional brands while operating them the way we operate Rixos. And the margins are excellent. The cost of development of a resort, the way Rixos does it, is actually very beneficial for developers. So we're hoping to be able to use that learning curve that we had with Rixos and then apply it on a further larger portfolio.
Fantastic. Carlos, if I may ask you for Hilton, how was...
I mean, the first bright spot is if you guys, I mean, are super smart over here. If you look at the four of us, you will see where's the bright spot. Here.
You're the only one with no bright
still
spot.
have
We
hair.
all have bright spots.
We actually have 3 bright spots. You're the only one without one.
So, yeah, I mean, if you look at our region, again, I mean, Egypt, the last time, I mean, I think I was in Egypt 2 months back. I went to the new administrative city. So I've seen cranes more than people. And if you go to the northern part of Egypt, there's a lot of mega projects happening there. In addition to that, I mean, the giga projects of Saudi Arabia, which you all know about. And UAE is still, I mean, our focus in terms of development. But definitely the region, our region was a bright spot by itself. I mean, in terms of opening up pretty quickly for businesses, we see that businesses are ramping up quite nicely. So if we take back, I mean, 2020 and 2021, I mean, year to date, we had signed large number of deals, starting with the Conrad Etihad Tower, Conrad Rabat, 3 deals in Seychelles, Waldorf Astoria, Canopy by Hilton entered Seychelles with the opening of our LXR Mango House, which is doing fantastic. So basically the bright spots, if I see, I mean, that we are now year to date on more or less 150 deals in the pipeline. And what we did in 2020 and 2021 during the pandemic, I think it's a great base. I mean, to see a bright, I see a bright future. So if we are able, I mean, to do great deals and a good amount of deals in 2020 and 2021, while we were unable, I mean, to move. And this goes back, I mean, to our fantastic relationship with owners. 80% of our growth, or 80% of our new deals, are coming from existing owners. So that's why, I mean, this had helped us, I mean, to grow our pipeline during the 2020 and 2021, and it's a great base, I mean, to predict the future. And I think the future, which we see, I mean, 2022, and everybody talks about business coming back in maybe 2023 and 2024, but I believe that the business is starting to ramp up pretty quickly.
Excellent. And if I may, it seems all 3 of you really have looked at the same regions, very frankly. But are there any, interesting hotspots, maybe Africa also, Jerome, that you see actually forthcoming in the next few years that will become very interesting and where Marriott is eventually focused on?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at our existing portfolio today, we've got about 300 hotels and 60,000 rooms in the region. If we look at our pipeline, we've got 150 hotels. Now, if we split that Middle East and Africa, of this pipeline, about 100 are in the Middle East and only 50 are in Africa. Geographically, it's wrong, right? Just from a sheer size of the countries, the continent that we're dealing with. This being said, not all markets have the same amount of financing, of investment capacity. There are markets that are more lease-driven, which create some additional issues, as you know, for large operators. But clearly, once we start going on the west side, Nigeria suffered for a little while, and we're starting to see some growing interest clearly going there. And you know, we've taken an approach a few years back to really try to place developers in all the sub-markets in order to get an easier reach. And that has paid off during the crisis, because as we couldn't travel from Dubai to Morocco or from Dubai to Nigeria to Cape Town, we had people there that were actually able to talk to our owners, reassure them, just stand side by side, because sometimes that Teams call is simply not enough. And so being there actually allowed us to pave the way forward. And I actually truly believe that there is a strong potential for growth. I mean, Luis was talking about the all-inclusive. Since we've done the acquisition of the Sunwing portfolio in Latin America, we have really pushed the growth really, really hard. And we're bringing into EMEA as well. All I'd say is, you know, we all have to be careful about the COVID hangover situation. You know, serviced apartments have done very, very well during the COVID, but serviced apartments won't work everywhere in every market. All-inclusive resorts have done really, really well during the COVID, but at some point, to do an all-inclusive resort, you have to build massive back of house, right? Everything is connected. It's significantly more than a normal resort. And if you're in a market that doesn't have the airlift to get you the all-inclusive business, then you're stuck with a property that won't be profitable once COVID is gone, once the trends have changed, when business has returned to what is a more normal situation. So we're careful how we go, and we try to educate our partners as well about what makes sense now versus later, and just to make sure that the growth is well balanced.
Excellent. Carlos, can I quickly ask you about geographical, also for new hotspots, and really, especially Africa, and really where do you see the future there in that region?
We recently concluded a deal in Cameroon, and it seems that there is quite a good activity in Cameroon. In South Africa, still the same. On the western part, I mean, like the Côte d'Ivoire, Angola, Nigeria. So those are hotspots. But again, we go back, I mean, to the point that that Jerome made. I mean, it was crippling. I mean, you cannot really fly from South Africa to Nigeria. The team is based in South Africa. They were unable, I mean, to move. But if you look at the overall activities, it is really promising, and I believe that in the next few months we're going to see quite a good movement in those parts. Morocco is doing very well. I mean, we have a lot of activities over there, and last year we signed the Conrad Rabat, and we have quite good activities in Morocco. Morocco overall, I mean, is changing as a country, so I believe we will see a good traction in this market. But again, I mean, if you look at what we are focusing on, I mean, Saudi Arabia, we only are looking, I mean, maybe at the mega projects or giga project. But if you look at the business that is coming out from secondary cities, it's phenomenal. We have a lot of demands, I mean, to enter into secondary cities. With our Hilton Garden in the Doubletrees or the Hamptons, which makes sense, I mean, for secondary cities. So these are hotspots, I mean, for us, and I think those will keep us going for the next 1.5 years, maybe.
Fantastic. Yes, I agree with you, Carlos, that I think even in Saudi Arabia particularly, they're really going to the quality kind of operation, and even existing properties in secondary cities, tertiary cities, are now reaching out to operators to really
Yeah,
have
right.
that kind of professional operation, because they see where it's going, and if they want to stay relevant, they really need to go with, professional operation.
Yeah, you can't do 100 Waldorf Astorias in Saudi Arabia. So you have, to focus on where those brand fits. Exactly. In secondary cities, you have specific brand that really works. And at the end of the day, all of us, as investors and owners and operators, we look into the numbers, how the financials work. We make sure, that the return on investment of each of those hotels is there.
Absolutely.
You cannot, there's some owners comes to us, they want to do a Waldorf Astoria in a secondary location, and we end up, signing a Hilton Garden in. So it's all about education. It's all about, the amount of money that they want to invest in each and every asset. And our expertise and the owner's investment will have to be, will have to work, will have to work hand in hand in order to create, a good return for owners.
Yeah.
That's the optimum result.
And in regards of bright spots, very frankly, for me, it's also something else, and it's really the kind of structures that I have been experiencing and seeing that it changed. And in my time, for example, in early 2000s, franchise agreements were an absolute no-go. And now, when I see the entire portfolio, and that's not only you three, but the entire portfolio in the Middle East and Africa, 40% of the rooms that have been signed are actually franchise agreements. So really a huge shift, very frankly. And I think Accor was actually one of the leaders in this in regards to franchise. And from the three of you, actually, again, sorry, but it is Accor which has the most franchised deals signed in the region.
Yeah.
Louis, can I ask you, is this a trend that you see going forward and eventually surpassing management agreements?
I think people have a wrong perception that we are mainly against franchise. I think that it's just a matter of the right time, and I believe that our region has reached a level where we have owners that have the qualification, the understanding of our business, they care for our brand, so we are much more comfortable franchising up to a certain extent our premium brands, and we've done that more and more. And we also are seeing third-party management operators that also are solid, understand the business, trust in our brands, and in specific locations where we believe it does not make financial sense for us to go and set up shop in a specific country, we would be open to working with them. So as long as we have the right partner that understands the business, or a third-party management company that, again, will respect our brands, drive business, we're open for it. But again, this goes up to our premium brands and exclude all of our lifestyle brands.
Is this something you can see eventually going all the way to maybe lifestyle and the luxury brands in the future?
I think if you look at more mature markets like North America or like Europe, we all considered or have brands at the luxury level that we consider franchising. Because again, in that market, you have established players and owners that know how to do that business. I think lifestyle is a bit far from doing that. We are still learning and understanding how to take these extremely curated, extremely boutique-ish, extremely well thought through soulful hotels and expand them into a global operation. Because today, if we look at our portfolio of lifestyle brand, we've acquired very unique concept, created and designed and envisioned by specific people. And we're promising partners that we're going to expand this brand globally, but we're going to keep the promise, the DNA of that brand. So franchising that, I believe, will be tough for many years to come. You have a big focus on entertainment, big focus on F&B, and very few people understand that entire spectrum. We even as a group decided that this cannot work within the normal ecosystem of Accor. It needs to be run independently. So from a franchise perspective, I think lifestyle is a bit far for us. Premium, we're already there. Luxury in specific brands could be considered, especially under Emblem, which is our luxury positioned collection brand. So I think the market is evolving. We're flexible, and we'll always find the right solution for our partner.
Fantastic. Jerome, can I ask you, I mean, with Marriott, it probably did it need a lot of convincing? Is that something that came by itself simply because the market is changing, competition is changing? How was the transition from strictly management agreements to really go more flexible?
Well, if you go back 12 years from now, there were essentially no franchise agreements being signed even in Europe. Let's leave MEA aside, Europe, which is now a heavily franchise market. And over time, that has changed. I think as brands like us have to develop also, learn to develop also in the mid-scale and in the upper mid-scale or upscale segments, inevitably the demand for franchise will come. If I look at our portfolio across EMEA today, we're at about 50-50 on franchise managed.
Same.
If we look at the pipeline, it's probably, last year we ended up at about 3/4 of the pipeline being franchised versus managed. So the balance is ticking the other, I mean, the franchise way, it's quite obvious. But I think the first question, especially here, and where it differs from what I'm seeing in Europe is most of the owners who want to have a franchise hotel take that decision for a very specific purpose. And that purpose is, I want the brand to deliver what the brand delivers as part of the system, but I want an operator that will be really focused only on my hotel or with the ability to dedicate full resources to my hotel. And so I'd rather go with a third-party operator doing that job while the brand delivers the system. And that's fine, and that works very well. It's an educated decision. It makes perfect financial sense, and therefore we grow this way, as we said, certainly not on the luxury front yet, but on the select and premium brands, yes.
Yeah.
Here what we've seen is a lot of owners who have taken that decision because they feel they should control everything that's happening. And I think this is where it gets difficult, because if the idea is to have a franchise just to have control, that will probably not help you manage the hotel. Having control gives you power over what's happening, but doesn't give you the tools you need to actually run this hotel. And we've got a great example in Dubai of a hotel that was managed, that we flipped to franchise, and that is now coming back into the managed pool. And that is, for us, a clear statement that not everybody can run a franchised hotel. And so when you can't, it's very important to be self-aware of the challenges of running a hotel, work with a third-party operator eventually to do that role for you, or accept the trainings that the brands are willing to offer. A great example is in the US, we take our franchisees to school. This is the way you get to manage a Fairfield or a Courtyard in the US. You go to the Marriott School of Management. We teach you during the development period, and by the time the hotel opens, you're fully fitted franchisee.
Carlos,
Look,
would you also recommend?
In this part of the world, I mean, yeah, it's slowly picking up. And we see, I mean, third-party operators are evolving. So we have more experienced third-party operators, so you can at least recommend for owners, I mean, to engage with. But we are still, I mean, if we look at our region, Middle East and Africa, we're 90% of our existing estate is managed. But it doesn't mean that we don't like franchise. I mean, the guests, when they enter the hotel, they don't know if it's franchised or managed. And our system provides business for both, for managed and it doesn't differentiate. So we're definitely open for franchise.
What would you recommend somebody that comes to you and says, I don't know if I should manage or I should give you the management and just, or should I take my own management and franchise? What would you?
Yeah, it all depends on the location. If we believe, if it's a location that we can be efficient, and we can optimize, I mean, profitability for owners, then our preference, I mean, is to manage. However, I mean, like Louis said, I mean, if you have a lot of hotels that a lot of owners, investors want us to develop, I mean, hotels in maybe remote locations, sort of. I mean, you would in this case, I mean, I would prefer, I mean, to introduce some of the third-party players. So they can, they will be more efficient, I mean, in that case, as opposed to us. So it all depends on case-to-case basis. But definitely, the mentality is changing in the Middle East. As Jerome said, some of the mentalities in the Middle East, they want the control on the hotel, and that's why they want franchise. And then they realize that, oh, I don't want to wake up anymore. I mean, every day, 6 o'clock and 7 o'clock, and check, the receiving area, and who's receiving X and Y. And Z. So it's not an easy job, to manage your own hotel. So slow education is going through, and we go through this similar pattern like Marriott. If someone wants to franchise, we give them full education about how franchise works. So because at the end of the day, when the guest comes into the hotel, he doesn't know. You say, oh, it's a franchise or a managed. I want to go to the managed, not the franchise. No, there's no difference. So that's why education for owners who wants to manage the hotels are something imperative.
Excellent. Yeah, he should have the same experience at the end of the day, the guest.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm just aware of the time and wanted to really open it to you if there are any specific questions, anything anybody wants to ask.
Well, I guess we were very
There
clear.
was, Anil was planning to ask me a question.
He left.
Okay.
And Karim, you left, you waved a bit, or was it just a wave? Aha. Okay, careful. With bidding, it's dangerous.
You can ask Jerome.
Well, I have a bit of a question then, in regards of the franchise structure. Now, with third-party operators coming on board and you taking quite a, strict fee, if I may call it, on the top line, do you see that actually as a structure then viable for an owner? Louis, maybe I can ask you.
I think this is sometimes the concern that we have, because in our part of the world, believe it or not, the fee structure from a percentage perspective is lower than what you see in North America. And typically in these markets, when you bring a third party, it adds up. But here, a lot of time when we are at a 2% base management fee and a 7-8% incentive fee for a management, and you come in, you want to bring a franchise fee and a third-party management company, sometimes the add up of this is more expensive than going for a management agreement with us. So it all depends on the reason, again, that Jerome was saying. If the reason is purely to save money or pay less fees, it might not be the solution to do a franchise and a third party. If the reason is because you want someone to give more attention for your hotel in that specific market, even if it's more expensive, then it might be the right solution. So again, it depends, because ultimately we need to charge our fees, we need to charge our system fees, and then you have an operator coming on top of it, and that's an owner decision to say whether, yes, I believe that's the right structure to build up on, because it will give me the best returns ultimately. So we'll always try to give the owner the best solution, and we managed to do so. As you said, we've signed a good amount of deals.
Mabruk, very good. Excellent, very clear. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your feedback. Any questions now maybe that, yes, please.
Every third-party manager I've worked with, usually the proposition is that you pay our third-party management fee, you pay the franchise fee, and we will deliver a better bottom line, and you will not pay our fees any more than if you just had the direct manager. And their proposition is we will run the hotel more efficiently. And that's their whole business proposition.
That's what I hear also
And-
quite
and
often. I agree with you.
The argument is we can run a Marriott, a Courtyard, a Hilton better than Marriott or Hilton can run a Hilton.
It's a cute statement, though.
Yeah,
But
Well, I've seen it work in the numbers.
I think it depends on the markets we're into, right? And I take the example here of Dubai. We've got an office with nearly 200 people in the head office. It's really all suites of services based here. And if you have a hotel in downtown Dubai within walking distance from our head office, chances are the focus that this team will be able to give you is so strong that it's unlikely a third-party operator will do better than we can do. But it's also fair in, for instance, we have a partner that operates a few hotels for us, although they're under development now in Africa. And in some markets, we are positioned so far off from those markets that we have full confidence our systems will deliver the demand for those rooms. But it's also fair for us to acknowledge that somebody positioned locally will possibly do better than we can do in running this hotel because there might be more focus. So I think that statement is partially true, and it's really occasional, and it's on a case-by-case basis. But I certainly still think we're the best position to run our hotels, especially when we have the support teams within proximity. So it's really not one truth for all scenarios.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Yes, please, Trevor.
Yes, good afternoon. Having the pipeline is great, and kind of it's my bread and butter to measure that pipeline in Africa. But everybody will agree that the pipeline is slowing down, if not stalled. Where is the funding money going to come from? Where is the debt going to come from to actually move that pipeline to reality? You want to manage hotels, not management agreements.
I think that the pipeline is definitely an indicator, but I think in the past 48, 24 months, I think we've been able to see something very interesting, is that whoever is still in the game is solid financially. And whoever we are interacting with today is actually backed up, whether it's from a government or from institutions. But today, we no longer have in the market players that are trying to do hotels. I believe we have real players that have clear vision, that are backed up, and this pipeline is based on these relationships. Whereas in the past, you had a lot of players trying to structure their deal, doing residential, strata, multiple layers of financing, and at least on our end, we have seen those really reducing over the past couple of months, which will tell you that while the pipeline might be slightly smaller, it's a more real pipeline that will be delivered and will open.
Yeah, and maybe, Trevor, to complete that on our side, obviously, when we look at our select brands like Fairfield and Moxie that we're pushing now, those are new built hotels, and they will need financing. We've got a few leasing partners as well in some of those markets that help. But a lot of our business is on conversions right now. Last quarter, globally, a quarter of our rooms were conversions. We're seeing that being a strong driver as well in this region. And brands like Tribute, Autograph do very well, increasingly well. We've got Delta by Marriott, 4 Points, and obviously in Africa, Protea. We've revamped the whole program. And I know there's a reputation that brands, certainly Marriott and probably other of the big brands like ours, are difficult to work with. I'd like to challenge anyone who thinks that to come and discuss with our operators. You will see that we have become increasingly easier to deal with, and we certainly believe in that growth there on the conversion front.
I mean, in the market, there is plenty of, especially now, maybe in Africa it's a bit challenging, but in Africa we're seeing a lot of companies that do build and finance, and there's plenty of them, which we know, I mean, that, and these kind of stuff, these kind of deals, I mean, are happening. But if you look at Europe and the rest of the Middle East, we see a lot of cheap financing in the market. And nowadays, I mean, during the pandemic, you have a lot of owners that had renegotiated construction deals and got better offers, which I believe, I mean, helped a lot our current owners that are willing, I mean, to continue, I mean, the journey and finalize in the hotel's construction. But overall, I think Africa has been always a challenge when it comes to financing. But there is a way, I mean, to get around it. I mean, through those contractors that do build and finance, And the rates, I understand. I mean, I'm not an expert in it, but I understand from our investors and owners on the ground that they're pretty competitive.
Yeah, Aboudi, I think I see Matt. I think he's threatening to remove his
Everybody
pants.
is already. I'm seeing so many signs. So,
He said he'd
gentlemen,
remove his pants if we don't stop now.
You guys could talk forever, I'm sure.
Yeah, we
but,
can. I mean-
well, thank you so much.
thank you.
for that,
Thank
Aboudi.
you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.